This week, we welcome Jerry Layden, CEO at CyberSaint, and Kevin Powers, Boston College Law School assistant professor, to discuss CEOs. Do you know where that cyber risk report came from? In the leadership and communication section, CISO Mind Map 2022. What do InfoSec professionals really do? CISO shares top strategies to communicate security's value to the biz. Security leaders chart new post CISO career paths and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Monitoring and maintaining compliance is a never-ending struggle with a high price of failure. FIREMON helps customers meet complex and varying compliance requirements. FIREMON has fully customizable reporting, analytics, assessments, and dashboards to meet the compliance needs of any organization. With FIREMON, compliance reports take a tenth of the time, and real-time continuous compliance eliminates the anxiety and headaches of audit preparation. Improve security outcomes by improving security operations with FIREMON. Visit securityweekly.com/FIREMON to learn more. It's time to rethink how we approach cybersecurity because the reality is modern cyber attackers are already past your initial defenses. ExtraHop helps your security team find and eradicate advanced threats before real damage is done. Protect your enterprise and customers with better defense. Learn more about how ExtraHop stops advanced threats at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra HOP. Cybercriminals are working overtime. Last year in the fourth quarter alone, phishing attacks disguised as COVID testing information increased by 521%. Barracuda has identified 13 types of email threats and how cybercriminals use them to steal money from your company or personal information from your employees and customers. Find out about the 13 email threat types and how Barracuda can provide complete email protection for your teams, your customers, and your reputation. Get your free ebook at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 263, recorded May 16th, 2022. I am your host, Matt Alderman, in a cool 93-degree Texas. Joining me remotely are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque.
Hey, what's going on, Matt? It was a warm weekend here. I don't know if you can see on the dome. I'm a little red, so I spent a lot of time outside. Finally getting close to Texas weather, but nowhere near where you're at.
Yeah, well, I was in Rhode Island last week, and it didn't warm up until after I left, Jason. So,
well, thank you for leaving me with nice weather. I appreciate it.
you're welcome. Also joining me is Mr. Ben Carr. You reaching 100 today, Ben?
It's getting close. Nice and balmy here, you know. Eventually it'll warm up and we'll actually have a summer. But right now, yeah, it's good.
Security Weekly listeners save $100 on your RSA Conference 2022 full conference pass. RSA Conference will be live in San Francisco, June 6th to 9th. Security Weekly will be there in full force, delivering real-time live coverage and interviewing some of the event's top speakers and sponsors. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC 2022 and use the code 52UCyber. We hope to see you there. Don't miss any of your favorite Security Weekly content. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to any of our podcast feed and have all new episodes downloaded right to your phone. You can also join our mailing list, Discord server, and follow us on social media and our streaming platforms. This segment is sponsored by CyberSaint. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/CyberSaint. Jerry Layden is the CEO of CyberSaint. He is an accomplished technology industry veteran with experience in IT infrastructure, cloud, SaaS, and service. Jerry came to CyberSaint from Dell EMC, where he held various executive-level positions over an 18-year career. Jerry has been involved with various IT startups, consulting and consulting service providers. Jerry's passionate about bringing solutions to market and driving CyberSaint's exponential growth, customer focus, and momentum. Kevin Powers is the founder and director of the Master of Science in Cybersecurity Policy and Governance program at Boston College and an assistant professor at the practice at Boston College Law School and at Boston College Carroll School of Management, Business Law, and Society Department. Along with his teaching at Boston College, Kevin is a research associate at the MIT Sloan School of Management and has taught courses at the U.S. Naval Academy, where he was also the Deputy General Counsel to the Superintendent. Jerry and Kevin, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Glad to be here.
So we're going to talk about risk reporting, quantification, what that report is that the CISO sent to the CEO and the board. But Jerry, this is the first time you've been on Business Security Weekly. I usually have Patrick on. And so, we have a little bit of a common background. I worked for EMC/RSA before the Dell acquisition. I don't know when you started there, but tell us your journey of how you got to CyberSync.
Yeah, it was. Thanks, Matt. It was interesting. I was in core IT for pretty much my whole career. Worked with RSA teams while I was at EMC, so understood the GRC space. Had the opportunity to come over and be the CRO for CyberSane. We were early stages, and really looked at the market. And coming from core IT, digital transformation has been forefront for the last 10 or 15 years. And you see how immature the GRC/integrated risk management market is. And it was just a great opportunity to get in early, help build a company that had a great product, and really flourish in the integrated risk management market, which is the advanced GRC space, right? That's where everybody wants to go now. And so it's been interesting. When I first came over, I thought it was going to be easy, right? Everybody's using spreadsheets and you're selling an automated, intuitive software. And you find out it isn't easy, right? Because you're really selling against business process change.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so you say early. I was in way early then. I like at infancy stage, because I went down this path back in 2003 when I was running the third-party vendor risk program at National City Bank, now owned by PNC. And we had no tools back then. I was describing before the show. I mean, we did use one product that gave us the ability to collect control data and get answers back to our security framework, which was great. But all the remediation tracking, all the exception tracking, we were tracking it in paper. It was Excel spreadsheets and email. So I had this really crazy idea to build software back in 2004, competed with RSA for a number of years. And so, yeah, I've been through that. I've been through that life cycle. And what's funny is, I tell Patrick this all the time, Jerry. I love what you guys have done, because I know the mistakes I made back in the early days, building a GRC platform and not getting it to the point where you could scale it and integrate real-time data to do the things that you guys do really, really well. So I commend you guys for being able to do that, because like I said, I tried to fix it at RSA with Archer for about 2.5 years before I ran into that brick wall. So it's good to see innovation in the space again.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been going after that gap that the traditional GRC players can't deliver in the enterprise. And it's really going across the enterprise with thousands of users. And the traditional GRC products are just so hard to use. People need to be trained constantly on it, and it just doesn't scale. And that's where we've been executing over the last few years.
Yeah.
And had our success.
Yeah. So let's talk about this topic. We want to talk about the risk reporting aspects. And again, I'm going to pull in some history, right? I used to have to look at the universe of 70,000 vendors and try to put a risk ranking on them and share that with my information protection officer at the time. We were part of information protection, not information security. That tells you how old I am. And you used to have to try to quantify that. CISOs now have to continue to do that to their CEOs and boards. So what are some of the big challenges there, Jerry, when we think about how do I report risk up in the organization and make it meaningful and relevant?
Yeah. Well, I think their biggest challenge is the data that they're pulling up. How old is that data? How many people have touched it? If everything is manually being completed using Excel spreadsheets, how many mistakes have been made during that process? And we're really been trying to educate our customers and prospects on is you want to get to real-time risk. And the only way you can do that is by pulling in live data and taking as many people out of the process as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say there's even a level of how do you trust the data, right? I mean, if you don't have a centralized uniform platform and you're working out of a spreadsheet, how do you know that it's centralized? People don't have copies of it. You're working off of the right version of the truth. It hasn't been edited. You have clean information actually going into it. It presents risk at itself, just managing it through all of that unstructured data. And I would hope that CEOs realize that ultimately they're responsible for their risk posture, right? And with that, they're producing their own level of risk by leveraging unstructured data to manage their business risk.
Right.
Such a huge conundrum.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that falls right into our whole messaging. What we do, with an easy to use, easy to implement, intuitive software is we standardize across an enterprise, centralize all their information. So year after year or month after month, they're not searching for that data, and they can compare, business unit to business unit, year over year, or quarter over quarter, and then the automation piece. So we standardize, centralize, and automate, and that's how we've been going to market.
Yeah, I think that's really super important. I mean, in my past, I've often struggled with finding that balance between providing the data in a timely fashion, but at the same time not having the arguments with stakeholders about their differential sets of data that they have. Right? It's about having a common platform. I think that you're all going back to, so you're looking at the same sources, so the reporting information is consistent. So that's really important that your approach is going that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing customers who, when you're doing it manually, they might be using the same frameworks but different versions of that framework. So you still can't compare business unit to business unit, and it's frustrating for them.
Yeah, when we think about measuring risk, back in my day, right, we tried to normalize risk on a scale between 0 and 100, create different ranges, and try to do a really good job of comparing and contrasting risk on a normalized scale. Is that enough today, or do we have to really think about how to quantify risk into dollar terms when we're getting to the CEO and the board level? Because my guess is those red, yellow, green indicators aren't really enough for the business to make the right decisions on how to resolve and remediate risk.
Yeah, the 100%. It's not just good enough to show where the risk is. If companies are spending a lot of money, throwing a lot of money at their cyber problems, and they need to understand how the risk is going to impact them, and financially is the best way to walk through it.
Now, Kevin, when I think about this from a legal perspective, what are some of the trends that CEOs and boards need to be cognizant of as they're building or revamping their risk management program?
No, this is great. And I took a note here to what we've been talking about earlier is how you're reporting to the CEO, you're reporting to the board. Well, you're really going to be reporting to the regulator now. If you look, and we've talked about this before, you have New York DFS Part 500, right? That went into effect in 2017. Across the board, the federal side, it's been kind of, you should do this. Now it's going to be shall. You saw the proposed rules coming from the SEC. You saw the new FTC safeguard rules that are in effect, and they're all mimicking exactly what DFS is requiring. And that's, you have to put together a risk framework, your cybersecurity program, all these details, and then report it up to the regulators, okay? And certify you're doing exactly what you're saying you're doing. So if you're relying on these Excel spreadsheets, like we just talked about, how's a regulator going to go through all of that? Well, first, you're going to have to hire a bunch of attorneys on your side to go through all of that, which is going to cost you. And then the regulators are going to come in, and you're not really going to be able to show, here's how my program has been maturing over time. Here, if you have this and it's easy accessible and you have all these dashboards you can click, it makes it much easier for the regulators. It makes much easier for you, too, to demonstrate that you're doing what the regulations require. And then showing, hey, when we pivoted here, it was based on our own unique risk, and this is why we did it. And we have the data to back it up.
We went through this with Sarbanes-Oxley, right? After Enron and MCI and all the financial issues, we saw regulation come out around Sarbanes-Oxley It created the audit committee as a separate entity to the board to look at financial risk. Kevin, do you see us going down a similar path with cyber? Is that there is going to be a security board separate, kind of like the audit committee, that is going to be responsible for looking at risk and cyber risks and in the program, and then they're reporting into the board? I mean, like, I've heard this, and some people are like, "Well, I don't know if it'll really work out that way," but will it?
There's been a Gartner research on this where they said right now, I think it's they're predicting by 2025, 40% of boards will have that cybersecurity committee. Where it sits, whether it's a separate committee or it's an ad hoc committee, subcommittee of the audit committee, that remains to be seen. But I think you're going to see that because the regulators are really forcing the cyber issue all the way up to the board and to senior management to show. And it's not going to be the CISO presenting once or twice a year. It's going to be every quarter to the board, and then it's going to be at every committee here. So not every committee, but you know where I'm going with this. It's going to be the separate cyber committee. It might be called, the Emerging Technology and Security Committee or something snazzy like that, but it's going to be a committee that is reporting to the board.
Well, can we get a name like Peekaboo to actually come in and write the requirements for us like they did at SOX?
That'd be really cool, huh?
Exactly right. So then, Jerry, when I think about the future of integrated risk management programs, advanced GRC, as we kind of described earlier, how does that shift the thinking about how these solutions are now leveraged? Because it's not just CISO level, the CEO. Now we've got this potentially independent security board sitting over on the side. Like, how would they leverage some of this technology to help them make independent, validated decisions off of that data?
Well, I think it's only going to help, right? It's going to help companies become more secure. It's going to help companies understand where their risk is, where their posture is, as opposed to just kind of chasing that shiny ball around, which I think happens a lot. And when companies are using spreadsheets, a lot of them don't want to really know where their risk is, right? That's why they're using spreadsheets and using data that might be really, really old. So I think this is only going to help mature. And again, the fact that this market is still using spreadsheets in 2022 is really incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I sit back and I say, what is the future of risk management at scale? And when I say at scale, it's not just, my organization assessing the risk of our supply chain, but you want to know what? You know how many times we're getting on a weekly basis handed spreadsheets from our customers assessing us?
Yeah.
So I sit back and I say, I need an ecosystem now, an ecosystem that I can test my vendors, my third-party organizations, as well as interact with my clients, because that 1,200 question questionnaire that they're sending in a spreadsheet is an immense amount of burden on our staff. And some of it's going to have to be changing hearts and minds, because as an organization, we say to them, hey, are you willing to accept our data that we can give to you? And they say no. You have to follow our program, have to follow our spreadsheet. You have to fill out this, 14-tab Excel spreadsheet in order to do business with us. So I'm looking forward to the day that we have an ecosystem that not only protects my people and my business, but protects our customers and integrates with our customers so they know and can trust us.
Right. And Jason, wouldn't it be great if you have one platform that covers all of that, right? As opposed to buying
incredible.
Yeah. As opposed to buying boutique products and having to manage several platforms as opposed to one. And that's the beauty of integrated risk management, right? You're bringing everything under one umbrella.
Yeah. Yeah, that is nirvana. That's where we need to be, and that's what we need to be evangelizing toward. Because there's too many silos. I mean, I have an example of one customer where, I want to say we're probably at iteration 10 of spreadsheet coming back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And, I just look at the waste that's there and the potential, errors that could be in that spreadsheet at this point. And I don't necessarily trust the integrity of it at this point now, because it's gone through so many hands, so many people, and just bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
Kevin, you wanted to hop in there for a second.
And that was great because Jason set me up for that too. And think of the board now. You go back to the board; they have their own subcommittee. And they're going to be educated on this now, so they're going to know what the CISO is talking about. Do you think they're going to stand for sheets coming back and forth and them going through piles of documents? No, they're going to want it readily accessible so they can look at it and they can follow it and figure it out and what you're
Yeah.
doing. So when you're asking for money and you're trying to make that business case, you really have to do it now. You just can't say, hey, it's really bad out there. You're going to have to demonstrate the risk and show it to them.
Yeah, and you want to know, Kevin and Joey, there's no more powerful aspect that you can bring to the table when you need investment than saying, right now we have business risk of losing X amount of revenue because this customer is saying they may not do business with us because of this particular control or set of controls. Now that ties it to revenue based on a real customer who does business with us.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's how you saw the SOC 2 market take off, right? There's a ton of vendors in the SOC 2 market because you have to be certified, right, to sell to pretty much everybody.
Yeah, and Jason, that use case is how do you then extrapolate to show the full potential of that risk across prospects and your customer base from that one person, right? And that's where some of the different quantitative modeling techniques come into play. Jerry, I'm curious, where do you see the quantification side of this going in the future? I think you guys are doing some work with FAIR now, but are more of these types of models going to get embedded into these systems to help us do some of that quantification?
Yeah, I mean, I think some customers have their own version of FAIR, for example, that they might have tweaked, that we have the ability to download, and we have the ability to download most of the risk models that are out there. I mean, it's as you start to go through it, then you get into the risk remediation part of it, right? So how do you have a workflow of who's going to focus on that, who's going to make sure that it's being addressed? So it's just going to keep growing and again helping our customers understand where their risk is and where they should be spending money.
The accountability piece of it is huge. I call it the scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz because you get so many people saying, I didn't do it, but they were supposed to do it, right? And just pointing fingers opposite ways. Having that platform be able to assign accountability, show who's responsible, and then in what time frame is a key management strategy and tool to have.
Yeah.
Right. And the ability to monitor that. Because you can't go like this if someone's able to look in and, hey, you had that assignment. You don't wait till 6 months. You're going to watch in a month and see what's going on. And if they're not doing the work, you're able to jump on them to get them to do it.
100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Kevin, there was one point out of Jason's conversation around the 14-tab spreadsheet. I was part of the early shared assessment program that turned into the standard information gathering question. It was like 1,400 plus controls and growing, which is hard to manage manually, right? Are we going to see some standardization over time as the Fed step in, the regulators step in? Will we get more standardization around some of this, or are we still going to be kind of having different frameworks all over the place and I need to crosswalk pretty much everything to figure out what to respond to?
I wish I could say, yes, the federal government's going to come in and fix everything, but I think you know the answer and you set me up well. The answer is, from my perspective, is no, I don't see that at all. And you already can see that with the SEC coming out with their proposed rules, which go counter to what the government just did with Joe Biden's new reporting requirements, which is causing it to do now. So everyone's going back and forth on that. What the FTC is doing, what we have with HIPAA. I think what you're going to use is the CSF as its base. And then you're going to have all these other frameworks, which you're going to build out your own special, unique framework, and then address and do all this crosswalk and gap analysis and figure out what applies, what doesn't apply, and think of all the conflicts too. There's going to be a lot of issues out there, and I think they're here to stay.
Which means, Jason, you never get away from the one-off spreadsheet, or Jerry has lots of crosswalk implementations because it's the only way you're going to manage it.
You know, at the end of the day, though, if I had a platform that I could do the crosswalk once, now I realize economies of scale, right? Mm-hmm. So net new client, net new framework, net new requirements. All right, I'll put the effort in to do that crosswalk once in a system. And then any other time or next year when they're on it again or another company in that same vertical comes on board, now we have it. You know, I'm willing to put the elbow grease in up front as long as it's repeatable afterwards.
Right.
Well, it's funny you say that, Jason, because we actually have that platform, right? That automates the crosswalking process. So that's great.
That's perfection right there for the folks who spend a lot of time on vendor risk management and risk management when it comes to our supply chain, and then on the customer side coming to us too.
Yeah. We actually used it in class. Jerry let me borrow it. So when the students asked, how do you do this? And I said, let me show you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a great way to train the next
it-
generation on how to
That's
do
it.
risk management,
That's it.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Ben, I know you dropped out there for a second. I just wanted to know if you had any questions for Jerry or Kevin now that you're back.
No, thanks. Yeah, sorry, having some network issues, but yeah, no, I really believe in the story of trying to do it once and do it right and make sure the data is something you can all align to. So yeah, I like the story.
Awesome. Jerry and Kevin, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and go Celtics.
Go Celtics.
Luckily, I don't have a team in this fight. If you want to learn more about CyberSaint or how to report the right risk to your board, please visit securityweekly.com/CyberSaint. We're going to take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.